Okay, we're sorry for the delay. We're a little late, but we promise we'll make it worth your while this afternoon. Welcome from the studios of CBS 2 News in Boise, Idaho. This is the fourth in a series of webinars for One More Day. It's a nonprofit dedicated to suicide prevention. Now, together in this series, we're exploring with key leaders in the field of suicide prevention how to develop community-based prevention and resiliency models. You will hear in these seminars best evidence-based practices that are being deployed in the military and in the civilian sector. I'm Brent Hunsaker. I have the privilege of being your host today. With me is David Connolly. He is the founder and executive director of One More Day. And David, let's start it off by, let's talk bottom line here. What do you want people to take away from this seminar today?
I really want people to understand that when it comes to any kind of struggling, it's temporary at best. It's gonna pass no matter what. So our goal at One More Day is literally to get you one more day, to get you from today while you're struggling to tomorrow. And from there, there's a ton of other resources that will help you get the rest of your life. But I also want everybody to realize is you never know when where help's coming from. And we'll see that later on in this broadcast. We'll see a perfect example of that. Brett?
Okay. Last time around, we introduced all of the board members for One More Day. This time, I'd like to abbreviate things and just mention a couple of the new additions to the board. We welcome today General Mike Holmes. He is retired from the Air Force, retired just last October, after nearly 40 years of service as the commander of Air Combat Command. He is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, an adjunct fellow at the Center for New American Security, a senior advisor at the Roosevelt Group, and the chairman of board of Red 6. Also new to the board is Misty Letich, who is currently serving as the executive director for the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network. Misty also works on the Clarksville Mayor's Challenge to prevent suicides among service members, veterans, and their families, and also chairs the Governor's Challenge. So welcome to both of you as new board members. And we also want to extend a special welcome today to a guest of ours, Major General Timothy McKeithen. He's retired. He was the Deputy Director of the Army National Guard at the National Guard Bureau in Washington, D.C. Again, welcome to those who are joining us for this webinar and also to our special guest. Now, if we can, are we ready with Kevin? Is Kevin up? I see him there in the box. That's a good sign. One bit of shopkeeping here. We're going to do question and answers a little differently today. We're going to try to ask you to, instead of asking questions directly, verbally, as you will, unmuting your mic, we ask that you use the chat box. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen if you're on Zoom right now. It's a little like a balloon icon, little chat icon. If you click on that and type in your questions, then we will relay them to the presenter. Also, if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, you can type your questions in the comments sections. So now, let's get right to Kevin Hines. We are honored today to hear from him. He is a suicide survivor who is now a very successful author and activist. And Kevin, right off the bat, I want to ask you about that term activist. I see it on the web. Are you comfortable with a title like that? Does it really describe your role?
You know, I've never really been one for titles of any kind, but people have given them to me over the years. And people say activist, author, advocate, filmmaker, but really I'm just Kevin. I'm just a guy living with bipolar disorder, trying to make a difference in the world to the best of my ability. And so if people want to call me an activist and they believe that's what I am, that's fine with me. I do advocate and do activism work, so I guess it's fair.
So what does advocacy, what kind of a role does that play in your recovery?
It's a huge role in my recovery because, getting to go out there every day and do the work to try to help other people heal, to try to help other people be here tomorrow and every day after that, and being a big proponent of military suicide prevention since 2006. I will say that the advocacy I've gotten the chance to do on behalf of others has changed my life forever and has blessed me a great deal. And it's one of the most therapeutic things a person can do who's like me, who lives with bipolar disorder and constant struggles and regular thoughts of suicide. It's something that is one of my greatest gifts, and I really appreciate it.
Hey, Kevin, I have a quick question for you on that. For people who may be struggling with bipolar disorder and they haven't been diagnosed, they're not sure. Can you tell a little bit about how do they feel? How do they know that they should get that checked?
You know, I can tell you from firsthand experience that my behaviors all changed. I went from, sleeping regularly, eating healthy meals, to not sleeping at all, to talking rapidly, to having these massive ups that would follow by huge downs, because once you go up, you must come down. So I would go into a euphoric, natural manic high, caused not by recreational drugs, but caused by your brain's misaligning chemistry. And I'd come crashing down into a dark abyss of depression and pain. And it would happen so often that it was irregular. It was not, as they say, and I don't like using this word, but normal. And so I would go up and I would crash down, and people around me started to realize something is off here with Kevin. He's not well. And so, I have bipolar disorder type 1 with psychotic features, which means I have auditory and visual hallucinations. I have paranoid delusions that make me feel like people are out to get me, trying to hurt me and trying to kill me. And so I deal with all of this, plus panic attacks and stress attacks. And when I first learned I had bipolar disorder, I was able to give it a name so I could find a way to defeat it and defeat it one day at a time. I'll never be free from this diagnosis, but I can squash it one day at a time, one moment at a time. And I always say it's one step at a time, and they're baby steps. And so, for the people out there who are wondering if their loved one is going through this, or the people that are out there who are going through it, who don't know what to do, get checked out, go see a therapist, go see a psychiatrist, and find a way to determine if this diagnosis fits your situation, and get a second opinion. So you're not just doing this blind. Search out for someone who's reputable and get a second opinion.
Now, Kevin, let's back up here. I really would love to hear you talk about your powerful story of survival. You were in San Francisco. You had decided to kill yourself. You were headed to the Golden Gate Bridge, but there was a caveat. You told yourself that you would abort if something happened. Pick up the story from there. What was that something?
Absolutely. I'll just say this, just so you hear from my perspective, compelled to take my life. My voice is in my head telling me I had to die. But that said, here I was ready to take my life in a way that is 98% fatal. And I made a pact with myself. If one person says to me, "Hey kid, are you okay? Brother, is something wrong? Or pal, can I help you?" I would have told them everything and begged them to save me. And here's the thing. This is actually more common than you think. If one person does or says this, I will. If one person does or says this, I won't die today. It's a pact instinctually people make with themselves who are suicidal, who are on the brink of attempting to take their lives. It's been heard around the world from means of all kinds, and it's been even studied. It's fascinating. And so if we can get to people in that moment of struggle, we can keep them here.
And it was obvious that you were struggling, right? I mean, you're on a bus, you're walking, you're in tears, you're in distress, and you came across people.
Yeah, I was crying my eyes out on that bus. I was crying like a child on that bus, and waterfalls were flowing from my eyes. And I couldn't reach out. I couldn't say it out loud. I needed someone to say it to me, and nobody did. They just looked at me. One guy looks at me and says, "Hey, what the hell's wrong with that kid?" As while smiling on his face. And I just blew my mind. So, it's been a long, arduous journey, and I still go through all the symptoms I've ever had. I still have paranoid delusions, hallucinations, auditory and visual, depressions, manias, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, but I am able to cope with it because of how hard I work for my mental health. And that's what I think I want to leave with your watchers and your viewers today, is that no matter what you're going through, you don't have to let your pain defeat you. Instead, you can let it build you brick by brick from the ground up and let it mold you into a strong and resilient person. And if you can have gratitude inside your pain, I believe you can always survive it. I think that pain is inevitable. It's coming for all of us if it hasn't already, but suffering is optional. It's a choice. Every clinician I've ever talked to has told me I was suffering from depression, suffering from bipolar disorder, suffering. And then what I did as a young man is I adopted that narrative as my own. I blogged and wrote about suffering. I did videos about suffering. And then I realized that I've been in pain arguably since the day I was born in squalor in a crack motel, but I've never suffered a day in my life. It's a matter of perspective and perception. If I can say to myself that instead of becoming the victim of my own story when I thought I was suffering, I can live with, fight, battle, and thrive despite of my condition, then I can become the hero of my own story. And that means we all can.
Kevin, one other question on that. Do you, as we're going through this and I'm hearing you, I'm starting to think, beyond this webinar only. And I was thinking, do you think that maybe this is a good topic that we bring into one of these is bipolar? I'm sure there's more people suffering with it than number one, we know, but is it a big enough problem that we need to bring this to the public eye in a way like this?
It's a massive problem. 57 million Americans live with bipolar disorder, but a great many more live with diagnosed mental illness. And a great many more have undiagnosed mental illness who aren't talking about it, who aren't getting treated. So yes, we need to talk about this on a regular basis in a global setting so that people in pain can hear that they're not alone, that we've got their back, and that suicide is not the answer to their problems. It is in fact a problem.
Now, back to your experience. As you were heading towards the Golden Gate Bridge for a jump that would mean almost certain death, how many people did you encounter along the way, besides that one gentleman on the bus who was deriding you indirectly? How many people did you encounter that could have said, hey, what's going on, and didn't?
Well, that's the thing. I was on the bridge and people, bikers, joggers, tourists, runners, they all went by me. Officers looking for suicidal people went by me twice. They had not been trained back then in suicide prevention. They are today, and today, thankfully, they save between 50 and 120 lives a year, which is amazing. But back then they weren't trained and they walked right by me. And so, that's the part of the struggle we need to recognize, is that if you see someone in active lethal emotional pain, if you see someone crying, don't walk by, don't just keep on moving. Stand in front of them and say, hey, I know I don't know you, but are you okay? I'm a little worried about you. You look like you're going through something really bad. Can I help you? Is there anything I can do to help you? And you'd be surprised how many, I can tell you, as a person who has experienced this firsthand and then gone on to help other people who experience it, I have stopped people in their tracks that I don't know from Adam and said, hey, are you okay? And you would be so surprised how many people will be like, why do you care? And then you get into it. You're like, well, I'm a human being and so are you. What's going on? Can I help you? And they're like, and they break down and they tell you their whole story and they ask for help and you get them the help and they survive the day, one more day.
And that is completely, the hardest part about asking someone for help is listening to that answer. And if it's somebody who's clearly crying, we know that answer is going to take a lot of our time. And I think a lot of people avoid that question for that very reason. So I think we need to start training ourselves, as you said, as human beings, to give up that time, be willing to say, what's wrong? How can I help? And move forward from there.
And for a lot of us too, it's just the not knowing what to do, not understanding the fear of how do I help that we have to overcome.
Yeah, it's funny.
Kevin, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's fascinating. When you ask someone, how are you? The typical answer is, okay, fine, and good. But if you don't know, I want to know how you're really doing. And if we can build a society of people that are willing to wait for the real answer, we could save a lot more lives.
And that's what it's all about, is having the patience. If you see someone crying, you say, hey, how you doing? And they say, fine. But you know that's not true. We haven't got to the whole story. So we need to take that one step further and say, "No, seriously, I can see you're upset. It's showing on your face. What can I do to help?" And Kevin, I know you're a big supporter of suicide prevention training. You mentioned that the police officers have been reading in quite a few of your things. How do you, I mean, one more day, that is one of our basic tenets, is that everybody, whether it's military, veteran, family members, police, everybody needs to be trained in at least some form of suicide training. You really can't, if you don't know what signs to look for, you can't identify them. Do you have any programs that you really like?
You know, there's plenty of programs out there that are very valuable and very helpful to people, between Assist and Living Works and Mental Health First Aid, and NAMI's programs, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's programs and webinars, and the Glendon Association and their work and efforts in suicide prevention. And I mean, the list can go on and on. The Bridge Rail Foundation, who is now working with, who my father founded the Bridge Rail Foundation after I did what I did to raise the net at the Golden Gate Bridge. The bridge is building the net right now. As of 2023, when it's completed, not one more beautiful soul will ever again die off the Golden Gate Bridge, and it will become the largest and brightest beacon for suicide prevention, reduction of access to lethal means all over the world. You know, we have an opportunity to find these programs and to disseminate them amongst the people that need the most, and we have to do it. We have to find funding, we have to find ways to get it out there, and we have to find people who are willing to listen, and then go and train people, and then go and be those stewards of change for people in mental pain.
Now you have a book coming out, right? What's it, the third rail?
The third rail.
Third rail, I believe it is. What do
I
you
do.
hope people get out of that book? What's the takeaway?
You know, the third rail is a book I wrote with Jesse Cohen. It came out May 15th of this year, and we've already had people say that it's changed and saved their life. We don't own that. We just feel we're conduits and it's affecting them. But Jesse Cohen was a Tulane law student in the height of the crime era and the height of the organized crime era in Louisiana in the 1990s. He was in his 20s then. And he became, in his mania with bipolar disorder, he ended up being trained by a Vietnam War veteran in Krav Maga. And he would go out at night with a black suit, a black shirt and a black tie and a baton, and he would enforce the law, his law, against criminals who were assaulting and hurting other people. And he would leave them tied up for the police to take in with a note on them. And he would do this for a very long time. He'd be in trouble with the police, he'd be in trouble in psych wards, but he really believed, in his mania, he became this animal that wanted to protect and serve and save lives physically. And he did just that. He had run-ins with the KKK, he had run-ins with organized crime, and he became a vigilante. But the book is about what it's like to live inside the depths of a manic mind. And in the beginning of the book, Jesse writes about how you can survive your suicidal ideation. Now, the tragic part of this story is that Jesse lost his battle to depression. He lost his battle to suicide. But the book is living on as his legacy, helping other people stay here. And we want people to read it, to take it in, and to understand that it's there for you, to give you that. Although Jesse's not here anymore, his message is, and it's powerful.
Kevin, at this point, one thing I'd like to do is open it up so some of our guests, if they have any questions, I don't want us to hog all your time here, and see if we do. I'm not sure if we have any questions that have come in. If not, we will continue talking. I think it's important that everybody has a chance. This is a rare opportunity for everybody to chat with you. So do we have, can you read that?
We're looking at a screen just off here that's showing us the feed from from the web, and I can't. Can you read that, Kevin? I can't read it from my vantage point.
What is it?
Hold on one second. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to read this.
Okay, sounds good.
It says, as a mental health chaplain who works at the VA in the community, educating clergy about how to care for veterans, any education you can provide about various mental health conditions is more than there was before.
Hmm.
Not so much a question, but a statement, and very powerful one.
Very powerful one, for sure. And there's a message from an individual who writes, I could not help my son enough to stop him from taking his life. I tried everything I could, but nothing helped. My life is horrible. How could I help if I could not even help my son? First of all, to that individual, I'm so sorry for your incredible loss. I could relate to you in this matter. I've lost 11 people I love to suicide. Jesse was like a brother to me, and he's gone, and I can't get him back. But here's what I'll say about that. There's a couple things. We have to stop asking ourselves the question why they died. It's an unanswerable question because they're no longer here. We have to ask ourselves the question how. How do we look to the living and move forward? I don't believe we can move on from a suicide of a loved one. I've never believed that. I think that's impossible. But we can look to the living and move forward in time and do things that can honor their memory. One of the things I do for the 11 people that died by suicide that I love is I celebrate their birthdays with people who love them just as much as I do. And we celebrate with cake and a candle, and we only are allowed on that day to recount the good times. And I think that makes their memory live on forever in an honorable and hopeful and positive way. That's not the answer to your horrible pain, and I'm not suggesting it is. I'm saying to you that please, I beg of you, find a way to celebrate your son's life and the beauty that he was, and forever will remain in your heart.
I've never heard that before, Kevin. Thank you for that idea. That is something I think we need to start doing, is celebrating the lives instead of punishing ourselves for the past. And if I deal with a lot of the survivors, and I know that is one question I get so often is, how do I get to the next step? And you're right, it is celebrate what you had.
I mean, imagine if the military took a day to celebrate. Imagine if every military base took a day off to celebrate the lives of those we lost to suicide, and on that day, we're only allowed to recount the good times. Imagine if we did that, the healing that would occur, because you'd be doing it in units, you'd be doing it in droves, and everybody's recounting these beautiful memories, these hopeful times. It would really help morale.
I agree. That's a wonderful thought. That would be something great to institute. Now, one second again. I'm going to go over here. We got another question. This is from Kevin. Kevin says, I work for the American Legion, and I would like to know how to get started with education and/or awareness. Where do we begin? And that's probably the hardest part of any program, is the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. How do you start it? Kevin, what do you think?
Well, I think, one of the things you can do is begin to read everything you can about suicide and suicide prevention and mental health and well-being. And once you start reading about it, once you get a Google alert for it, or you're reading every book that comes out or every article, you're going to find programs embedded in those readings that are going to help benefit you in your education and your education goals as it pertains to suicide prevention. So immerse yourself in the narrative and then take it from there.
Do you mind if I ask you a personal question? I mean, you're a leader in this effort, and you constantly retell a traumatic time in your life. How does that affect you? How do you do self-care to make sure that as you revisit this story for groups all over the country, that it doesn't start to consume you or trigger you?
Yeah, this is a great conversation to have, because when I gave my first presentation ever to my 7th and 8th grade class, to a 7th and 8th grade class of the school I went to as a kid, and all these 120 kids are sitting in front of me in their Catholic uniforms, the same uniform I used to wear, and I'm wearing my back brace over my shirt, and I'm holding onto my cane with one hand, and I'm dropping page by page to the floor as I'm reading the presentation from the page, which I haven't done in years. I was crying and I was shaking like a leaf, and I was terrified, and it was raw, and it was really rough experience because it brought back so much pain. But this is what happened. At the end of that presentation, 8 hands went up. And I thought to myself, what am I doing here? I'm not making an impact. How is this helping people? But 8 hands go up, and they're all intelligent, important, empowering questions. And I get 120 letters in the mail from 120 kids that I spoke to 2 weeks later, and 6 of them were actively suicidal. They wrote that in their letters because they were not given parameters on what they could write by the teachers. The teachers screened the letters. They were giving the mental health help they needed, and those kids are alive today. And when I realized that back then, my dad looked at me, he read the letters, and he said, Kevin, we have to do this however, wherever, and whenever possible. And we never stopped. And we grew it into, me speaking pre-COVID 345 days a year. And I'm able to do it because it fuels me. It is my passion. It is my love. It's a gift to be able to do this. I get to be here, and getting to be here is a privilege and a gift no matter the pain I'm in. I still have suicidal thoughts. I still have depressions. I still have manias and all the other symptoms. I'm able to cope with them because I work hard, educate, exercise, eat healthy, coping strategies and mechanisms, talk therapy, physical therapy, art therapy, music therapy, blue wave light box technology therapy. I do it all, teletherapy. I do it all. And I do it every day. And that's how I stay stable to the best of my ability. Does it always work? No, but I've got this. And I've made a conclusion and a decision that I will never again attempt to take my life so long as I should live. I'll die of natural causes at old age because I've been given this gift of second chance at life. I'm not going to squander it.
And we didn't get a chance to close the loop on your story. You jumped from the bridge. You survived. Tell us how that happened when the vast majority of the time, the people who jumped died.
Yeah. 98% of those who leap off that bridge never again get to tell their story. They're gone. 39 people in 85 years of that bridge being open have survived. Roughly 26 remain alive today. Many have died of natural causes. 19 have come forward to say they all had the same instant regret that I did. And 5 of us get the privilege to stand, walk, and run. They call us the most exclusive survivors club in the world. There's a book of the same name by Ben Sherwood. In the water, flailing to stay afloat, a sea lion came to my aid and kept me afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind me. It was a miracle. It was purely a miracle. In the hospital, one of the foremost back surgeons on the West Coast was leaving for the day. He opted to stay to do my surgery, the first and only of its particular kind he invented for me. And here I am walking, standing, and running whenever I need to. And it's amazing. I'm so grateful to be alive. I'm so grateful I get to exist. And I just want to use my time on this planet left to help people.
Yeah, Kevin, and that's one of the things that I try to push through One More Day is when you're struggling, you have no clue where that help is going to come from. In your case, it was the form of a sea lion who wanted to keep you alive. Even nature at that moment thought you were worth saving.
And there was no way that you were going to be able to swim to shore, let alone keep your head above the waves, because as I understand it, you had several broken bones.
I shattered my T12, L1, L2 into shards like glass. I missed severing my spinal cord that day by 2 millimeters.
Oh, man.
Well, Kevin, I promised to keep you not too long here. So anything, are there any closing things you'd like to say?
I just want to say to all of the servicemen and women and individuals out there today who are struggling with your mental health and your pain, unburden yourself, unsilence your pain. Tell the truth about your struggles, because the pain shared is the pain halved. You are worthy of my time and others. Your pain is valid, and you matter. You matter. I promise suicide is not the answer. It's the problem. Please be here tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. And if it ever comes to a point you're having trouble, you have my number. Please call.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Wishing you both the best.
What a rare privilege it is to hear from someone who has gone through the experience and yet survived and can now tell us how to help other people in the same situation. Kevin, it's a great privilege to listen to you today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now
both.
Thank you. Let's move on now to our next presenter. It's Dr. Agata Kolodziejczyk. And doctor, right off the top, I'm going to apologize for my poor pronunciation. I did the best I could, but I don't know Polish. but we appreciate you being here. The good doctor has obtained her doctorate at the University of Stockholm. She's a neurobiologist with a space mission. She co-founded and is now the director of scientific projects at Analog Astronaut Training Center. She's also the author of numerous educational and scientific publications on chronobiology. I don't even know what that is. I'm sure she can explain it. Space biology and neurobiology.
That's a lot of biology.
Dr. Kolodziejczyk, welcome to our webinar today.
Good afternoon, very warm welcome from Poland. Forgive me for my language because English is not my native language, but I will try to be clear. And thank you very much for invitation to this amazing meeting. And I'm grateful, David, for your invitation and to participate in this wonderful initiative. Thank you.
We're grateful to have you. And it's been a long time in the making getting you here, but I am glad you are here, Doctor.
Yes. So should we start from the presentation, how you wish?
Yeah, that would be great. They can give you the ability to bring up your PowerPoint.
Yes, I will share now my screen.
Okay, perfect.
Fantastic. I hope you all see it.
We do.
We do.
Today, I want to speak a little bit from completely different, maybe perspective from neuroanatomy, because my scientific background is neuroanatomy, so kind of hardware of the brain. All things that are here discussed are related to neuroarchitecture of our brain. This suffering, feeling the pain, everything is in our brain. That is why it is very important to understand. Kevin told very nicely that you need to name it, to name the force which leads you to suicide. Yes, so if you know the name, it is much better to cope with the problem, with the issue. So this is one thing, that our brain needs to have a definition of the error, so-called, or the problem, and then we humans, we can solve the problem once we know what is the problem. And in our trainings, we try, of course, to observe how humans' brain is created, how humans behave, but we try to sell the philosophy that thoughts that we have in our brain are like seeds. More you think about something, it will grow and grow inside your brain. So more you think about suicide, it will grow, it will be more and more realistic, and finally you will do this. Why it happens? It is very easily to understand considering this neuroarchitecture of the brain. Because when we think about, so to say, for example, a cat, there are special chains of neurons that are activated when we are thinking about cat. If we are thinking about cat more often, these synapses, the connections between these neuronal networks are getting more and more flexible to communicate and more easy to communicate. So when there is a potential, electrical potential within the neuronal network, it will come very easy when you will think about the cat. If you think about completely new problem, it may be very hard, especially if you think about the problem that you cannot name or cannot solve. So in our trainings, we try to train the brain in a way that you will have induced creativity, you will have activated problem solving, including suicides. We are not directly working on suicides. We are mostly working on some extreme environments, and we insert our candidates, our analog astronauts, we name them, in isolation, in stress, and we try to reprogram their neuronal networks in a way that they will get used to these harsh conditions. So, of course, there are different people. Each of us has different brain. That is why doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, they cannot really define all problems which you have inside your head. It is very complicated. So we are also running several trainings, tests to visualize what is the way of your thinking. So, for example, this half of glass of water, yes? How you think about this half glass of water. So you see here on the right, this is from internet, very famous graphics, but it visualizes that there are many types of definitions of this half glass. And this is just a half glass of water. Imagine far more complex issues. So our goal is to train via practical activities. This is very important, again, from neuroanatomical part. Again, what we want to do, we want to create new neuronal networks. We are not touching things that are like a disease, that are ill, but we try to create a new healthy neuronal network, yes? This kind of thing. And how to do this? We need to insert this brain into completely new environment. In this case, it is kind of extreme environment. And these practical activities in the extreme, completely unknown for our brain environment. The particular attention is put to behavior of the crew because you never are alone in this environment. You are interacting with other people, and it is even enforced by us. So it is very complex rebuilding of your neuronal network because you need also to communicate and to interact with others within the same environment. We are standardizing these kind of trainings in order to evaluate the quality of performed experiments, to observe the process of the training, to observe how your neuronal network is created. And especially we put attention on creativity, which is the key to all your problems, because creativity will lead to problem solving. You will find the way how to escape from the cage of your illnesses, of your diseases. In order to create this extreme environment, we decided to build isolated habitat. We call it habitat again because it is something unknown for our brain. If we would name it house, laboratory, you know, brain knows this kind of names, but habitat is kind of spacey, kind of outside of all problems on the earth. That is why habitat is a nice base or a space base, a simulator. And first we built the base in Turza, in a small village, which was modular analog research station. Then we built another habitat isolated from light and time in Piła, in the north of Poland. And now we have our private habitat, very small one, 57 square meters in Rzepiennik as Analog Astronaut Training Center. Actually, we trained, more than 100 people. And all of them, they learned something about themselves after stay. How it was a long stay? It was only 1 week. 7 days of very extreme training. We are showing different methods, different types of rituals, which you need to implement in your daily life in order to create complete, healthy neuronal network. So here you see the missions that we already done, and now we are just ending the Solaris mission, which is in the second lower line. And all these missions that are not yet with people, they are still waiting to be completed this year, this summer. Well, mission preparation is not that we are doing this and people, participants are just coming for ready mission. Not at all. We ask them to prepare already to this 1 week stay in the habitat. And as you see here, we develop the chain of relations between each member of the crew, member of the team, that all we build the mission. Even one participant, if it will not work, the mission will not be succeeded. And this is the tool to show how important are you in society, that you are never alone. You are a chain of something bigger, and you interact with your environment. This also shows you how much important you are. So it is not only the definition that you are important in the society, but it also shows you the forces, the external forces, which are acting on you and which you are also participating in. So organization of such mission takes from 1 to 3 months. We distribute documents, mission manuals, habitat manuals, so you already start to imagine how the habitat will look like, what will be the equipment, the tools available, that you could maybe create something important. Of course, we ask each participant to prepare his or her own individual experiment. Experiment is again some name which is very nice for our brain, because this is not very stressful. This is just experiment. This is something like a game, but it is based on some scientific background, some rationale. So you need to dig in the literature to really recognize the problem and try to build up something on this problem. So again, this is the task which is very well known among scientific scientists, scientific environments. But for all people that we train, this is kind of new. And all these protocols, these drafts of manuscripts, of experiments, they are stored in our place. And we create mission libraries shared with all participants. So we really build something on it. And we have a special controlling system. So our habitat is full of sensors, monitoring tools, cameras, of course. You might say that this is like a big brother. And Mission Control Center, who are we, sitting 140 kilometers from the habitat, we observe our participants, how they behave in kind of a distance. This is also very important because we, MCC, Mission Control Center, are fully responsible from the distance to this crew. We name it Analog Astronaut Crew inside the habitat. And we try to build the relation from a very big distance. What this means? It means that your brain learns that even physically there is a distance between person, even far distance, still you may have contact with this person and real help. Many people, they don't feel it. If you are 300 kilometers in a distance, you are not counted as a real. So this is kind of important also to train and to really do this contact, this real interaction. So here there is an example of MPOL missions. These are special programs for students which are standardized, and we observe that more and more people like these missions, and they are coming back and try to train more. So here we are. This is the pin on Google Earth. Thank you, Google Earth, where we are. So very warm welcome, or from the distance, you can be our mission control center. And when you are coming to Kraków, finally, after this preparation, 3 months preparation time, We have integration activities. We are introducing each other, discussing, clarifying what will help inside the habitat. No one knows yet where it is. We buy food for all week, and we finally accommodate. Maybe you know that communication is crucial. Here is some result from one of tests that we are doing just in the beginning of our pre-training. So we ask participants to draw a man using 7 figures, which are very randomly used. And you can see from this slide that each person understood the same task in a different way. This shows that we are different and our brains think completely different. And this is very important. So we try to show to people that each of us thinks different. And it is very hard to understand what sits in your brain. You need to communicate. You need to draw it, to write it, to express it. Finally, we had the mission. This is the habitat inside and the crew. They are full of tasks. They are extremely busy. This is one of tasks to make people all the time very busy, working hard and working individually and in teams. So what they are doing, they are of course following the mission schedule, which is prepared by us, by Mission Control Center. They fill the databases and perform individual experiments that are related with their creativity. Besides, of course, they need to communicate via public outreach activities, and we try to observe them how they behave in kind of emergency simulations. These are scenarios that we remotely can provide inside the habitat. After the mission, we evaluate it using standardized parameters, and what we measure the water used during the whole week of the mission by the crew, wastes produced, wet wipes, simple things. Also, we are evaluating more difficult things. So the photos, the quality of photos, what made you interested? What did you photograph? And we try to see the process from day 1 of the mission to day 7, what people photograph, what they are reporting, how they create sentences. So we try to observe the process of development of a new senses, new things that emerge during this extreme mission. And here you, for example, see these basic parameters. So all these missions from MPOL 1 to MPOL 5, they had the same standard task, the same standard trainings, like, for example, polarized light vision training, because maybe you don't know, but we have receptors for polarized light vision, but it is never trained at schools. Nowhere. I never met in the world that people are trained at school how to see the polarized light, but it is very easy. So we try to train these new things. And here you see also something what is very interesting, considering these all illnesses and suffering of the person. This is called Vinci Power Nap, what you see on the photo. It was designed by my friend Magdalena Filcek. She is an architect and designer, and she used a special material that makes you this movement inside. And you need to be inside this cocoon, you can name like this, for 20 minutes. What this gives, all this touch, it is activating oxytocin release into the from the brain. So when you are hugging yourself, you are expressing the several neurotransmitters, neurohormones, which are very positive. You are hugging yourself, you are loving yourself. It is very important and very simple, behavior that you can do every time, every day, maybe not on the street or in the bus. But look at the dogotherapy, hippotherapy. I don't know, there are so many, tree therapy. You always hug something, some issues. And in this device, which is a very simple device, you hug yourself. And this will give you very big positive injection of feelings, of thoughts. You will start to take care about yourself. So coming back to the surgery on the open brain, which we try to make inside the habitat, we tried to break old ways of thinking because we are no longer taking care of these unhealthy seeds, yes, unhealthy thoughts, and we try to build something that gives you a new sense for life, that gives new passion, new hobbies, new joy, new happiness, and of course, new friendships. So this artificially induced isolation, where everything happens, this open surgery on the brain, is without natural light. You are deprived from sun, deprived from time, deprived from all things that you have every day, but you simply don't see it because you are completely refocused on something else. And when you are deprived from these simple, easy things, daily things, then you start to miss them, you start to appreciate them, and you start to appreciate where you live, that you live on a beautiful planet, in a beautiful environment. Also, these new rules, new procedures, this discipline, which is completely different from daily life, it can show you how organized day looks differently to not organized day. And many students, they told us that this is wonderful what they learned. They never did so much during the one day as they made in this habitat, because they observed how you can schedule and pack all day with so many duties. We put particular attention focused on health and self-observation. So we also train people to analyze your physical and mental health. And this is very important, to be aware what happens with your body, what happens with your energy of life. And one of tasks which I really love is to make the most creative photo of the mission. And here you see how crews, they need to develop something creative. And this is one of very interesting thing what they do. So again, I would like to highlight real versus subjective. Subjective is something what sits inside your brain only, which is very individual, like drawing this man from 7 figures. And real, what is real? Real is something like average of subjective of many people. This is the best definition, I think, for now. So the real, still it is something what we feel that is real, yes? But these feelings should be always be based on our senses, on our deep knowledge and deep self-awareness. In order to recognize real versus subjective, we insert people into time illusions, we analyze subjective time perception and subjective thinking. I already mentioned you about training completely new skills like polarized light perception. For some people, even solving Sudoku is something completely new. Here I'm showing you illusions. So we have different watches. We try to fool brains and to show people how easily it can be fooled, because many people, they think that they have really, that brain is something like completely something that you can rely on. And with this task, with time illusions, you can see how easily it can be cheated. I think that I will repeat something what Kevin said. It is very good to read a lot, but maybe also to read about something what would you like to do? I know that it is hard to say, and I don't want to, I'm not feeling confident to say about suiciding because I never was trying to suicide. My friends, yes, I lost several friends because of it.
Sorry for your loss.
I maybe will finish soon. Sorry for this long presentation, but yes, we also need to see the real danger, not a simulation. So to really see what is dangerous and what is not. And very important are interpersonal relations. Remember, you are not alone. Yes, you'll never walk alone. That's what I wanted to say. Don't be afraid of sharing everything with other people, with your people. Also, interesting thing is to do something scary, like we do skydiving. Some people say that if you want to heal out from depression, you just skydive and then you will have no depression. But I think it is not not for everyone. It depends on, again, on the brain. So we also try to do many extreme things, not only in the habitat, but in external environments. And I think that something what is common for everyone, for all of us, is curiosity, is willing to explore new things, and science is the best to combine all things that are inside our brain. Maybe they are hidden, maybe they are not used, but we have it. We have curiosity, we have exploration skills. And with that, yes, there are, besides science, also engineering for some other people is a very good thing to start with in order to refocus and to build new things. Oh, that is a lot about simulations. So yeah, finally, we try also some bioastronautics. We are now building a new spacesuits and underwater habitat. We are flying to the stratosphere. So if you are interested in any types of our trainings, always they are kind of extreme and they are trying to rebuild your neuronal networks. You can contact us and we, I think, we can always answer and maybe we can give you some tip. With that, I would like to thank you and welcome you warm to contact us, to be with us.
Hey, Doc, as rare as this is, I have a bunch of questions for you. Generally, I
Yes.
just sit and listen, but you came up with a lot. When you said at the beginning that we need to be able to name what we're fighting with, you know, as warriors, most of us are trained that you need to know who your enemy is to fight. You can't fight a war if you don't have any idea who your enemy is. So you're saying it's the same thing, even suicide or any of those things, is you have to be able to identify what or put a name to what's going on. Now, when you say that, do you mean in a general sense? So we need to identify suicide, or we need to identify the depression that's behind it, or the divorce? Can a little bit more about that? What are we naming, in other words?
Definitely, we should understand the reason why we want to do this. Of course, it is sometimes not defined. It is not only one problem. There are many. Usually, there are many issues. Yes, and especially now in society after COVID, we see that there are many problems growing and growing and growing, and finally, people cannot stand with them. So there is, it is very hard topic. It is very big problem, and definitely other people and local support is crucial, I must say. Understanding and local support. Very often, this support does not exist because all people have hard situation and they are simply, they have closed eyes to the external environment.
Okay, you also mentioned about the seed theory, that if you think about something, it causes you to think about it more and more and more. So am I to understand, as far as someone who's suicidal, they don't just go from, okay, I'm thinking I'm suicidal to suicide. Is it a longer process than that? And is that what you're talking about, where we need to interrupt those thoughts with other thoughts or different events or something to keep us busy? Is that, did I understand that properly?
Well, I think I never had the case where a person wanted to suicide, came to us, and then said that I completely changed my mind. We have not this kind of evidence, so I can't say this directly, but purely from neuroscientific, neurobiological side, I must say that if you think about good things, you become more and more into these good things. If you start to think about bad things, you are more and more into these bad things. This is very general, I know. So because I have no evidence, I just send you a message which is something like a general principle of the nature of creating neuronal networks.
Understand.
And you talk about in creating these neural networks, the more that one certain pathway is traveled, the easier it is to travel that pathway.
Yes.
And again, it goes to the whole seed concept of the more you think about it, the more you obsess about it, the more it becomes real and actionable.
Yes. Subjective became real. Yes. At some point.
Okay.
And Doctor, if you'll hang on for just one more second, we will check to see if we have any other questions from other participants in this webinar. If you guys can pull up for us the questions. Okay, we do have a couple questions. We're working out the technology here to get the questions to us so we can ask them to you. So bear with us for one more second.
Okay.
And then while they're doing that, I do have, oh, go ahead.
The question is, what advice do you have for law enforcement officers or officers in the military that are having thoughts of suicide? What can they do?
Oh, very hard question. Well, again, from scientific point of view, I would simply refocus. Try to finally sleep. So search for something what is the most distracting, the most painful, and try to solve this. And then, for example, many people, they cannot sleep. And this is completely changing the chemistry of the brain. So try first to build something on it. Once your brain can do this, yes? For example, I met many people, and even I was not sleeping for several years, but because of kids. And I observed that I cannot make some tasks, for example, memorizing things. I cannot be effective in very, complex tasks. So first, try to solve the most simple thing, what is disturbing your brain chemistry, and then try to regenerate.
And another thing that you mentioned, when you're dealing with astronauts in isolated situations and remote mission control on Earth, they're in space, the distances, how to establish the human connections, the human bonds within the team and also connected to Earth, that make the space flight a success. If you break down the communication, if it doesn't happen, if you don't have that connection, people die. And the same could be said for suicide as well, is that you need to develop the human connections. You need to be able to reach out and trust other people,
Yes.
and have that ability to communicate with them. The more you're isolated, the more you're cut off, the more you're at risk. And it's the same
that's
for an
on phone,
astronaut.
yeah. Even if it's on the phone, if you don't have anybody home, reach out, just get somebody on the phone to talk to. Is what she's saying is we just connect with somebody, and that's all
Like-
we're asking is take that next step, make that phone
Yeah.
call, go have a cup of coffee with somebody, anybody. Let's get your mind off where you're at this very moment and move on to the next task.
And maybe create some of those positive neural
Yes.
pathways, reinforcing back and forth and make it easier to think of something good rather than something bad.
It is good to have
Are
bypass.
we at
there.
all on track with that, Doctor?
Are we with you? Yeah.
Okay,
That's a
the
good
other question that we have, this is coming in, is talking to emergency dispatchers that work at 911. They're talking to someone who is suicidal. Do you reach out over the distance of that phone line and communicate to them that you love and care for them and can influence them, therefore, not to commit the act of suicide?
Well, this is a this is very complicated. First of all, your word should be important to that person. So it should be not just a word, not just speaking, but something more important. Carrying not only, like a message, verbal message, but carrying some emotional message. Emotions are very important for people who still can feel emotions, because there are many people with disability in emotional feelings. So it is very difficult to generalize this. And of course, it should be first the direct contact. It should be, for example, we have this, that we always monitor the people. So even we had this distance, we see what this person is doing. We see the life support parameters. We see if this person is filling the tables, if this person is doing the tasks, because everything lands on the Google Drive or somewhere else. And we see, we are also making the same from our side. So our space, the common space is virtual, but still it is something what we create together. This is important. So, yeah, again, I don't want to generalize because it is very complex topic and there are very different brains. But if you create something common that can be reachable from two sides, and then there is some meeting point inside, there is no problem.
To create common ground between the dispatcher and the person they're talking to is what you're saying.
A connection.
Yeah, find something that they share and then move forward from there.
And some strict relations between two people. So even they are in the distance, there is some very strict relation. So one, and like separated, these two people will not do this common thing. There must be some relation. Okay. And this keeps this person maybe alive, hopefully.
And that is our goal, just getting everybody through this crisis this minute. Get you to tomorrow. That's what we're here for.
One more day.
One more day. That's all we that is our job. Our end of this is to get you one more day.
Maybe Dr. I want to say something.
Yes.
Can I please? The most important thing is that from outside, we cannot really directly make one more day. We need to reprogram the brain that this person will want to live one more day. This sits inside, We people, and many people are feeling, how to say, that feel guilty that they couldn't stop some process. They couldn't stop suicide of very beloved person. It is not our, how to say, it is not our thing that we can do this. We can't do this. this person who is deciding to suicide, only this person can decide to live one more day. Because we
just
cannot
have
really
to help
directly
find
do this.
it.
But we can train
Dr.
and we can.
Kolodziejczyk, we appreciate you joining us today. It's been a wonderful presentation, and
Sorry for this.
best of luck with your work in Poland.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I appreciate you taking the time for us.
Thank you also very
David,
much. And
Go ahead, Dr. Agata, go ahead.
no, I
Were you
just
saying
wanted
something else.
I just wanted to thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Love this communication on the
Yeah.
internet. It's still a work in progress, I think.
Yeah, we're still getting this down to an art on our end, so sorry about that, Doc. But yeah, in closing, the things we want everybody to take away from here, Dr. Agata's got some great points on some tools we can use about how we change the way our brain is perceiving things. If you're sitting there and you're in the process of thinking about suicide, then let's, if you can, change what you're thinking about. And you say, go do something different, go talk. Sitting alone, isolation, I think, is a killer. Doc would agree with that, that being isolated and thinking about this takes that simple seed and makes it a redwood. So we need to jump, we need to change that thought process and move on. Hopefully everybody hearing from Kevin was just, I every time I hear the guy, I get a tear in my eye because it's so easy to relate to what he says. And I think everybody at one time or another has either been there, not obviously on the Golden Gate Bridge, but we've been there with our thoughts. So if you're struggling with something, bipolar, depression, don't care what it is. You don't have to say, oh, I need help. That's the stigma part of it. Just go talk to somebody. That's all you have to do. It's all we're asking from. And that's it for me.
Well, and the zinger for me, you mentioned Kevin's story, was that at one point on the bridge, somebody actually gave him a cell phone and asked him to take a picture of them on the bridge. I mean,
Why he's crying.
yeah, while he's in crisis, so obviously so. And we just, for those of us who interact with others on a daily basis, we just need to be aware of the people around us. I mean, half the battle is just recognizing that someone is having a tough day, that they're in crisis, maybe, and reaching out to them and beginning with that first question of, how are you? Is there something wrong? How can I help?
do?
Yeah. So
Dr. Joyner says it best. It's the little things that make the difference. It's making that phone call to your friend. It's asking somebody on a bridge who's crying, what's wrong? How can I help? It's just that simple. Just that doesn't guarantee a result, but it sure starts the conversation. Again, follows what the doctor said. It changes that thought process just by your asking them, are you okay? They have to think about that answer, takes them out, their brain off suicide. So that's where just care enough to ask and then listen to what they say.
yeah. Some shopkeeping stuff. We
Yeah,
got another webinar coming up.
Yep, we do have another webinar. It's going to be mid-September, probably after the second week, so the 16th to the 20th, somewhere in there. We're going to be taking on a really tough, even tougher than this subject. We're looking at sexual assault, domestic violence, and how they can contribute to suicidal ideations. And then we've got a second expert who's going to be coming in and really talking about some more modernized ways that we deal with that. I want to be able to show people how they can help their friends, or commanders how they can help their people. So that's the goal of that one. I also want to update everybody. We on our Operation Better Together program, we're signing on right now with our first state that is going to apply for a pilot. So we'll even be able to help some units with funding for it. Get a lot of people trained in suicide prevention and intervention. That's really it. Those are our updates.
And for details on the next webinar, they can go to your Facebook page, correct?
Not yet. They're not on there yet, but they will be within the next week or two. We'll have everything updated. So please just check on either our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/onemoreday, or onemoredayveteran.com. check either one of them. We're updating those frequently, and things are changing quickly for us. So that's just that things do change quickly on there.
And again, welcome to our new board members, and thank you to everyone for joining us today and participating and hoping that somehow, some way, you can save a life. Thanks.
Thank you all.